I clicked the links to join the channel here over at Subscribestar. I got a mailbox. Mail me some comics, though not a comic like this. It's not worth the postage. So Marvel Comics retcons Nightcrawler's origin, who at first I confused with the Beast from Avengers and X-Men, getting them keep confused, revealed as a biological son of Lesbian, Mutants, Mystique, and Destiny. Because I guess they're channeling America Chavez. What was that lady's name? The chubby lady who wrote these lesbian space aliens were in an egg out in space somewhere, and they gave birth to a Spanish speaking or Spanglish speaking, also a lesbian super human who came to Earth with a Spanish accent, who speaks like I don't know, maybe like 10% Spanish, because I don't think the writer fully is fluent in Spanish. Is kind of weird. Kind of a weird origin story for the American Chavez. How well did that comic do? Well, it did pretty well for Zach, who had very successful videos. So what's new with Marvel? Fish licking, taco tonguing, and fuzz bumping, and why are the Japanese comics just kicking A and taking names? Something like the American comics is 91% taken over by Japanese comics. Weird. And stories like this is why. So they're retconning these two characters. It doesn't matter because these comics are not made to be read. I think the deal is they have to legally keep publishing stories to keep the trademark alive or something like that. So they make this kind of garbage that is subsidized by Disney, which is also making just the worst movies on earth. But they subsidize their losing movies with the occasional big hit like Frozen or something. But I think more with old movies that were just monster hits in the 80s and 90s, back in the days of when there were VHS tapes and DVDs and Blu-rays and those kind of things, and the merchandise that went along with them, probably are what make Disney profitable to this day. Because they don't have any interest in changing course with their movies. I mean, you go look at the past 10 Disney movies, and the one you really got to watch, and it's going to be hard to get through. Just watching 15 minutes of it is Strange World. You watch that and you look at Disney, you're like, whoa. If I wouldn't have said Disney is capable of going out of business a few years ago, go watch Strange World, just 15 minutes of it, and maybe a few of their other movies, and or Wish. Wish is the most recent one to come out, but Strange World is really the most egregious example. I mean, you really have to see it to believe it. It's that over the top. So anyway, let me see if I have this convoluted storyline correct. One of the storylines was that the mutants were actually demons. This article goes into way detail. We'll go into it in a minute. Because the writer hated Christianity, I assume, reading between the lines there. So we made angels and demons, but they weren't religious. So then what did it begs the question, what did you make God? Just another alien in the Marvel pantheon instead of the Alpha and Omega? And it's not offense, because you'd have to take them seriously to be offended. And Marvel Comics and DC Comics in general, American comics in general, aren't really intertwined within America anymore. That ship has sailed like 30 years ago. So I'm going to go through this long article, of which you will switch off the video after 7 minutes. But up front, why do they do stuff like this, which, when examined logically, has a very small appeal to people? No offense with any of this kind of stuff. To say some characters don't sell the audience, well, that's just objectively true. People getting offended of it and virtue signaling, it doesn't move the product. And at some point, you got to have to put aside these subjective people who are crying about every little appeal to emotion and go, yeah, but objectively, just speaking in a business sense, this is what sells and this isn't what sells. And the kids and the soy boys and pussies on Twitter who get triggered by that, they want to change the audience because the audience likes the wrong stuff, because the audience is mostly not left-wing globalist type of people. So to say it has a small appeal to people, you're in a business, right? So why wouldn't you sell what sells to the largest audience? So what's the message with these comics? One of the messages is that boys can be girls, and that, I guess the second part is that there really aren't boys or girls at all. It's just this shifting spectrum, that boys can act like girls and girls can act like boys. Well, why? Well, no, there's a pretty hard sexual binary. But why is this an issue? Is it a harmful message? Yes, I think so, because there's a reason society has a structure. I got to remind me to read this because it's unbelievably cringy. why people behave the way they do in a tribe and why the globalists do all this because they need to destroy the tribe. Oh, should I read this? Yeah, let me read this before I forget. So he's talking to her, and he says, but you're both women, referring to having kids. She says, I've lived for years as males, years as females. You know what I observe? They're all as awful as each other. What is that? Just the dystopian, depressing, everything is just garbage and there's no point in going on. It's like, this is not what comics used to be. Believe it or not, comics used to be totally different. So the only true binary division, here comes the lecture, lies not between genders or sexes or sexualities. Sex is a binary. You can talk to any biologist and they're going to tell you that. It lies between those who are allowed to be who they wish. See, this is kind of shifting reality because you can't be the other sex. And you say you identify as something, it doesn't mean anything. The sex is firmly delineated. And those denied that right. Well, again, this is this bizarre straw man. And what is she wearing? A skirt and a vest? Is that supposed to look like somewhat a vest with a hoodie? Interesting combination. Is it supposed to look, I guess, kind of like gender bending? Like women don't wear vests? For some reason, there's something about the outfit that's kind of throwing me off a little bit. So she goes, whatever else I am, it is for nobody but me to say. Yeah, but I mean, like, this all the Twitter kids straw man version of the world where they keep asking for BLT rights, and you look at them and you're like, what rights do you think you're denied? And I guess the one thing they come up with is not being able to go in the ladies' room. The men want to go in the bathroom with women or compete on sports teams with women and girls or something like that. It's like, well, because that's a sexual division. But whatever. So Civilization is what year is this? 2023. All right. I mean, yeah, comics are 2023. They're long gone. Been gone for 20 years. Civilization is this delicate structure that requires roles and people to fill them for stability. Women make babies and they carry the babies for 9 months and then they breastfeed the babies for several years after, and someone has to raise the kids, and that's just the biological role of women. That's life. Welcome to the universe. There's not much you can do about it. And when these Bolsheviks come along, I tell you, oh no, we can do things differently. Put off having kids. Those are the most evil, dangerous people on earth, telling people not to have kids. Anything. I mean, that's just the most invidious, sick, disgusting thing. And women's magazines have been pushing this for years, and now it's gone to digital. Anyway. So a lot of the Bolshevik philosophy is built on lies, but if you control the dissemination of information in the education system, you can brainwash kids to believe anything, as you've seen over the past 5 years, where you have these kids protesting and marching, oftentimes in blue cities, in blue states, and you look around, it's like, so why don't you go, run somebody for office and elect somebody different, or go to the mayor's or city council's house, like go to somebody who matters instead of just like burning down property and buildings and structures. So wealthy real estate investors can buy up those properties at depressed values, is what literally happened during the past 4 years. And they bought up those properties. Isn't that weird? It's like the Antifa BLM was this proxy agent of these very wealthy bankers and real estate people. And very few people, that doesn't make the media that often. It's like, hey, all this property's value went down. Yeah, what happened? Somebody swooped in and bought them. Oh, so I mean, if I was suspicious, I would look to see like who they were and like what connection they had, and is there anything behind the scenes? Is there any spider webs in place? Any connections? No, we don't need to look into that. Okay, so they have this surface level philosophy, or they tell the useful idiots in colleges. But the real philosophy is a little bit under the surface. The thing is, it's not hidden. A lot of this stuff is an open secret. The history is out there. You can follow them on social media if you want to see what they currently actually believe. The surface level is to destroy society of wherever they are. And they say, we're going to dismantle it and deconstruct it to break it down. And then they tell the useful idiots that they'll replace it with this globalist paradise that will treat everyone equally. It's, this saying is a conservative asks why a fence is in place before you tear it down. Except their real goal is to just break society down while maintaining their order and structure so they can rule and profit off of the chaos. They starve millions of the serfs to death, but they don't starve. It's the grow the tall grass theory. Wherever this philosophy goes, war and starvation follows, and America and Europe is going to find out in a few years. Now, I know that's a lot of heavy lifting for a small comic book and a small company, and yes, Marvel and DC are small compared to Japanese comics, at least the comic division of Warner Brothers and Disney. But manga isn't trying to destroy Japan. Disney and Warner Brothers are trying to destroy the West, and they're very successful at it. It's why the thing is, it's tiny little bits by bits. It's why you get such weird comics and movies, the things that just don't sit right with you. It doesn't feel clean and fresh. It feels something's off with it. It's dirty. It's a little sinister. Things don't make sense. They have the biggest marketing research companies on earth, and yet they don't follow marketing advice, and nobody talks about it. Nobody in the mainstream media talks about why Hollywood keeps making these weird anti-family, anti-nation, anti-order and structure movies that don't sell. Because the MSN has the same philosophy as the comics, which are now owned by Hollywood companies, Warner and Disney. Nobody wants BLT characters, POC, WOC, furry, otherkin type of characters, because they just don't sell to the largest audience. The largest audience is straight. And that, here's the thing, gay people will buy straight stories, whether in comics, movies, or whatever, but the reverse is not true. And that's just the hard line on the ground. Nobody wants feminism. It objectively does not sell to people. So Hollywood and comics make movies and comics with things that don't sell, and they know this. They aren't surprised when their movies don't do well because they have the market and research. Because they're following a higher directive, or rather, as this comic at least kind of good timing points out, a lower directive. They're trying to destroy the West by pushing things that are anti-traditional family and tribal nationalism. In comics, you see this trope all the time. They've even started talking about it publicly. It's the Bolshevik found family concept. And I've been talking about it for a long time. And then I remember I was reading a Mary Sue article last year, and they started using that term. So it's kind of a little bit of a mask off. Because once you look at that concept and you start breaking it down, you realize how sick and evil it is. Across all forms of media, they encourage kids to do things that their family won't approve of, the whole gay and trans thing, and they don't even wait for rejection. They just abandon their families and take to the streets to do drugs and find their found family. The goal is to destroy these kids, and even if they don't sterilize themselves and have kids, they'll be raised by single moms because she cut herself off from her parents and the rest of her tribe. This is totally different from the cute teeny bopper rebellion of a few years ago, because these kids are sterilizing themselves, they're ending their genetic line forever, or they're having gay relationships, which has the same outcome: no future children. The power of media propaganda to brainwash kids is the most dangerous and powerful force on earth. The proof is that parents are sterilizing their own children when they're not aborting them or having assisted dying for the sick, elderly, or depressed, as they're doing in Canada. Like, when you talk about Canada, you tell people what's actually going on in Canada, and you can point to the articles. They won't believe you until they read the articles, and then their mind is like, well, how is this going on? And then you have to justify it, because if you don't justify it somehow, you realize, oh, you're gonna need a civil war to stop this, because society is so seriously sick and out of whack that this kind of thing doesn't self-correct. You're not gonna vote your way out of MAID in Canada. It's medical assistance in dying, where it started with the slippery slope of just, I don't know, terminally sick, like pancreatic cancer. Okay, fair enough. Most people go, oh, all right, that seems reasonable. And then it went to the elderly, and then it went to just people who were too poor, and then it went to teenagers and mentally ill people. And you start looking at it like, instead of fixing society, you have this pressure relief that you funnel people into to, Soylent Green them, instead of improving the society, so you never have to improve the society. And you look at that, you're like, you're not going to vote your way out of that. That's insane if you think you're gonna fix that. So fixing it is going to be messy, but these comics and movies play a large part to blame. because it's subtle propaganda year after year where the water wears away the stone, or it's what is it, silicon rich waters flowing through carbon and rich material, woods or whatever, and atom by atom it replaces it. It just bumps off one of those atoms and swaps for swaps, and how many years later you have something that looks like a piece of wood, but it's made of a piece of stone. It's how it gets these things happen. The left keeps calling themselves progressive, but they've progressed to having kids think that they're all, gay and trans, and thus themselves not having future offsprings. So Schumer just replaces them, as he literally said in one of his little clips. So in the course of 100 years, the country is gone, and when future historians, and really it's the West in general, when they look to see what happened, they can point to these subtle little bits in comics and movies, and they just ask, like, well, why didn't anyone do anything? Why didn't anyone stop this? Because you boil the frog so slowly. What does I, hypocrite, say? You can't stop progress? Well, you can, but it's going to require some conflict. How much into this? Anyway, you can take a look at this, what they're doing with this comic. But I mean, like a lot of these comics there's probably more people talking about the comics than who are going to actually buy these kind of comics. Like, what's the target audience? Oh, it's like college girls in Birkenstocks who are angry at the world. So how many comics did you sell? 14,000. Wasn't there a time when comics would have sold 140,000? Yeah, but they probably weren't pushing this kind of stuff. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys all next episode.